Hi, I'm James Shillinglaw, and I'm here with Will Jones, who's the brand manager for Student Universe. Well, what is Student Universe? Well, it's a massive, large travel agency, obviously for students, and we're going to have Will talk a little bit about that first. And then we're going to talk to him about a recent study that Student Universe did on the youth and student travel market. And it's pretty fascinating, especially for all of you out there that might be interested in tapping this market, although Student Universe has a lot of it, that's for sure. But we're going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to talk about that survey and more on Insider Travel Report. Will, first of all, greetings. I know you're over in England there, and I'm here in New York. But so we are traveling, and we're all going over the place. But let's talk first about it. Remind us of what Student Universe is. What kind of travel agency is it, and who does it cater to?
Thanks, James. Great to be here. Yeah, so Student Universe is an online travel agency, and we offer exclusive discounts on flights and hotels and other travel essentials to students and young adults. So we do this through a global network of airline and accommodation partners who we negotiate exclusive rates with. And our core target audience is really students aged around 18 to 25, but more broadly, anyone really aged 18 to 30. And we operate in 4 countries. So the US, where it all began, Canada, the UK, and Australia. And we're a part of the wider Flight Centre travel group,
right,
who acquired us.
Which we know very well. You're in the States for owning Liberty Travel and GoGo Vacations and things like that. So we know them very well. Now, you launched this study, and tell us a little bit about this survey. Do you do this every year, this survey?
No, this is the first for us, actually. So we really wanted to just kind of understand our industry a little bit better for our own sake, and also to just help other people in our industry, other businesses. So the report itself is based on a survey which went to 4,000 students aged 18 to 25 and living in one of the 4 countries we operate, so 1,000 in the US, Canada, UK, and Australia. We also ran focus groups to talk to the students in person and to get just a more of a deeper understanding that you can't really get from online surveys. And we spoke to lots of leading experts within the travel industry too, so CEOs, editors, tour operators, and such like, to get their insight. So that's kind of why we did it and how it looks. And yeah.
Are you now? Is this something you plan to do periodically?
I think. Given kind of how it's landed, it seems to be quite well read and quite popular. So I think we'll definitely do it each year now. So it's going to become an annual thing. So this is the first one of many, I'm sure.
That's fantastic. Now, let's talk a little bit about it, because you are going over that student market, and I'm an old guy. I don't remember what generation I'm even in. So tell me a little bit, how do you define Generation Z, as we call it?
Yeah, so Gen Z is, there's no kind of exact definition, but broadly speaking, it's anyone born in the kind of mid to late 90s up to the early 2010s. I think the generation before Gen Z was millennials, so that would be me. I think before that, Gen X and then boomers. The newest one coming up is Generation Alpha. They're little toddlers at the moment.
I know. So, I have one. He's my grandson, so
so he would
he's already traveling though, so it's all right.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
You might want to survey him. I don't know if he can really respond right now, but But so yeah, we're looking at that survey. So age range is what, roughly?
So the age range for this specific survey was 18 to 25.
That's right. You mentioned that. Yeah.
To anyone in full-time education, so students essentially aged 18 to 25.
Now, can you tell us, define what is the state of student travel today? Are students really back traveling even after the pandemic? Were they some of the first to return?
Yeah, I think broadly speaking, in a nutshell, the state of student travel today is very promising indeed. The pandemic, as far as we can see, only seems to have heightened the desire to get away, to see the world, and demand seems to be as high as it's ever been and growing. So yeah, really, really promising. We didn't know how we would land after the pandemic, if it would put people off going traveling because of all the problems involved. But it just knows people, particularly the younger people, are just desperate to get away and see the world. Yeah, more than ever.
No, that's fantastic. And then, so, I think you say it's in the survey, well, what roughly is the size of the global youth and student market today?
Yeah, pretty big. We think around 370 million student and youth travellers are travelling today. So that makes up around a quarter of all international arrivals. So pretty fair wedge. In terms of buying power, approaching $500 billion, about $400 billion US dollars at the moment, and about 60% of that tends to be spent in destination.
So not an insignificant market at all, and we knew that already. But now that they're back, we got to pay attention there. Now, would you say that students are more resilient travelers? Are they less prone to not going on a trip because of things like pandemic or natural disasters, or are they going to say we're going to go anyway? What would you say to that?
We found, particularly from a pandemic, that and other crises that have happened over the last few years, we found that students are always, and young people in general, are always the first to kind of bounce back and always the first to, get back out there, showing the highest propensity to do so. So a very, very resilient demographic. They don't, unlike older generations, they don't have as much they have to worry about at home. They might not have families yet or advanced careers yet, and they're free or ready to go out and do these things. Highly resilient, yeah.
Now, would you say that student travelers now are maybe a little more curious before? I mean, look, in my student days, we wanted to go to the beach, spring break, things like that. And our budgets weren't that big. So we had to take, we had to do the 25-hour drive to Florida or something like that. I know for a fact, having a millennial myself, that they spent a lot more money when they were student travelers. Now, would you say that they're now more curious, they're more interested in culture and history, or do they still want that sun and fun?
I think that's definitely a really interesting trend we've seen from this study, is that that's where things are going. They seem to be much more interested in culture, sightseeing, really getting under the skin of a place, as opposed to just going and partying, clubbing, and whatnot. One of the things we asked was what basically motivates you to go abroad, to go traveling, and we found that the highest motivator, about 70% say, is to experience a new culture. Wow. Conversely, only about 20% say they go away to kind of go partying and clubbing and things like that, more traditionally associated with youth travelers. So we're definitely seeing a big shift there in the market, and we're catering to that accordingly.
No, it's good. It's good. I'm very happy they're a little more culturally interested in stuff. Unlike me, I was just adult, what did you? I just wanted to get away from school for a little while, but now it seems like they really are interested in seeing the world. Now, what would you say are students seeking more experiential things versus physical things, meaning they want to experience? Well, I mean, this has been a trend anyway for almost all travelers, but would you say they're experience oriented or more physical travel product oriented?
Yeah, I would say that, again, another generational shift here. We're definitely seeing that they're becoming more experientially minded. One of the questions we asked actually was, do you prefer to spend disposable income on experiential or physical products? And over a third said experiential. So we're seeing a lot more young people than in generations past wanting to do stuff more than own stuff, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's another interesting shift we're seeing.
Yeah, no, and of course, back then we had no money, so that now they have a little money. But let's talk about one thing you say in the survey. How likely are students to travel in the next 12 months?
Yeah, we found around 60% are likely to travel overseas in the next 6 months, slightly higher if we're talking domestically. So, for example, in the US, young people are around 75% are likely to travel domestically. But yeah, around 60% abroad, which again is really promising, we think, and shows that desire to get out and see the world.
Now, I'll go back to what I asked a little earlier about what do students have to spend on travel and how much on average do they spend on a trip? And also, where is this money coming from?
Yeah, maybe they're just better off. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's everybody's different, of course, and everybody has different means of income and financial support. It's a misconception, really, that students and young people are low spenders because they're typically on a budget, which is true. But the fact that they spend a lot longer in destination than the average tourist, they spend around 52 days on average in destination. that means that their average trip spend is around $3,000, which is about 3 times higher than the average international tourist. So actually, they're a more lucrative market than many people realize. In Australia, for example, young travelers account for about 25% of all arrivals, but 45% of all spend. And they can also, when they're spending a longer time in destination, if they're doing a working holiday or something like that, they can also attract more visitors in the forms of friends and family who want to come see them. So that brings more money in as well to regional economies.
Now, in fact, I just got through, I saw some sessions over the past weekend talking about the China youth travel market, and they have a lot to spend. They're on their back. So that's kind of interesting. So you're absolutely right that the student market is really has the bucks and has the propensity to spend on travel. Now, let's talk a little bit about where do students want to go these days? What are some of their top destinations, their most desired destinations? And then I guess the other thing is, where do they actually go?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So when it comes to our 4 markets, US, Canada, UK, and Australia, we find that students from those 4 countries are very interested in the other 3, typically speaking, and do go. So UK students very interested in North America and Australia, for example. There are other countries outside of those 4 that seem to have this more universal appeal to students wherever they're from. 2 that have really stood out from a survey are Italy and Japan. They both featured in the top 5 desired destinations of students from all 4 of those markets that we surveyed. So a real kind of timeless and universal appeal there. In terms of where they actually go, pretty much the same. I mean, of course, not everyone goes to where they want to go, but typically speaking, we see them follow through on if they do go, it's typically where they say they want to go.
Yeah, actually, and everybody seems to want to go to Japan these days. It's interesting. They opened up, and the country has been really, crowded ever since. And everybody wants to go, just like Italy is the other one that everybody goes to. Now, let's talk a little bit about your report. Sort of talks about the 3 pillars of student and youth travel. First of all, what are those pillars, and why are they significant? I think it was education, vacation, and leisure, right?
Yeah, so education, vocation and leisure. So vocation meaning things like working holidays and volunteering placements and things like that, more kind of career-orientated travel.
Yeah, I said vacation. You corrected me. Vocation is what we're talking about. It's for their future, right?
Easy mistake. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So educational travel we would define as things like traveling to and from school. Maybe that's just domestically within the US. You go to school in a different state to where you live. It could mean international students and things like that. It could mean language learning. Vocational travel, as I said, it's more kind of working orientated stuff. So volunteering, working holidays, internships, things like that. And leisure is more, as it says on the tin, your standard vacations, festivals, beach breaks, city breaks, things like that. So I think it's important to note that these aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, but it's nice to kind of categorize these things. But in the real world, it's a little bit messier. So someone traveling for a volunteering placement, there's probably going to be an element of leisure in there. But primarily, we find that people who go away is primarily for one of those kind of key categories that they travel for.
Absolutely. Now, we talked about one of them. How much do students really travel to get sort of schooled in life? I mean, that the travel itself is an education. I know, when my son was a semester abroad in Europe, actually, he was in London, half the time it seemed like he was off traveling on, Ryanair back then, and going all over Europe. And you know what? I was happy. He was able to get around by himself and go all over and meet his girlfriend wherever he wanted. So that was kind of a good thing to me. I stopped being worried about him a little bit.
Yeah, it's so true, and it's something that's extremely common. Thankfully, it's something that most young people don't realize until they're actually on the road and they've gone away. How beneficial these experiences are in growing you as a person, growing your confidence, growing your kind of transferable skills that can be utilized later in life. One of our kind of beliefs is that travel teaches you things that you can't learn in the classroom, and it really is so true. You could call it school of life, definitely. You develop a confidence and a worldliness about you that is extremely hard to do if you don't leave home.
No, absolutely, and I was very pleased that he got that. Of course, he had a little leg up because he'd gone to a lot more luxurious hotels and places in his youth. You know, something like Disney, like 30 times or something. So he was a little more sophisticated. But I was very happy. Of course, then he complained about some of the type of travel he had to do because
Well,
he was a little spoiled. Put it that way. Now let's talk a little bit about how Gen Z might be redefining travel today. How does this generation maybe differ from previous generations of student travelers, even in my day in the baby boomer era?
yeah, sure. So I think, as we've already touched on, they're more culturally orientated. They're more interested in meeting the locals and finding out a bit more about the place beyond the bars and clubs. I think they tend to think maybe a bit more strategically about their travel and about how they tend to maybe frame their travels more within longer term goals and ambitions. So as we just spoke about from a vocational point of view, they think about doing experiences, but they think about their career path first and then think what travel experiences can benefit this. For example, in the survey, we found that 87% believe that vocational experiences would improve their career prospects. So they really do believe that it will give them a foot up in the working world. So I would say that's a big difference. They tend to travel with a lot more purpose than previous generations.
No, and that's good. I mean, but you don't want me when I was a youth traveler. I wasn't traveling for a purpose. I was traveling to meet girls, but that's another story.
I'm sure
it's very, very basic, when it comes down to it. Now, let's talk a little bit about, cost. And obviously we've seen travel costs go, soaring in this year, and it doesn't seem to affect travel yet. But how is Gen Z travel being affected by this growing cost of travel and of life?
Definitely affected. We came from a survey. We found that when we asked them what their biggest concerns were about traveling, financial cost was the highest at 75%. Three-quarters of them cited as their biggest concern. But what we're seeing is that rather than putting to bed any desire to travel, it's kind of just what we're seeing is they're just thinking their way through it, thinking their way out of it, and becoming more savvy travelers. So very hot on discounts, very hot on offers. They're looking for other sources of support. So we found that almost half expect some sort of support from their parents or older relatives to help them with their travels.
Right.
That's the way they're getting around it. We found 95% of them more likely to travel if they're offered discounts. So this is a key learning, of course, for the industry at large. But a lot of them are just have a kind of I guess a fateful attitude about it, which is that if they're going to be hard up, then they may as well be hard up somewhere different to home.
That's right.
We spoke to one in one of our focus groups. We spoke to a girl from New Zealand who was imminently about to move to Europe. And she was saying how her friends and family at home were saying, God, they're in a cost of living crisis over there. What are you doing? And she points out, well, so are we, and I'm poor here. So, if I'm going to be poor, I may as well be poor in Europe. There's much more to do for me there. So
there you go. A very existential view of the world. I might as well be poor wherever I am, right? So that's
right. Yeah,
and it's just a different place, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you do have a section of the report looking at LGBTQ plus travel. How is that kind of travel? And obviously there are a number of students. Things are a lot more open today than when they were in my day, and people are more accepting of LGBTQ. At least I hope they are. And it's great. But how is that kind of travel changing for students?
Yeah, it's something they're definitely increasingly conscious of. As you say, in the kind of Western world, if you like, the LGBTQ people are much more accepted, a lot less likely to be closeted, and we're finding that they're thinking more and more about this when they go away. Not even just LGBTQ people, but people who aren't probably have friends who are, so they all want to look out for each other. Again, in our survey, we found that 95% say that the kind of attitudes and tolerance levels of governments and societies in certain countries, when it comes to things like LGBTQ rights, would have at least some level of impact on their decisions to travel there. So it's something they're looking at very early in the travel planning process, something they're very aware of, and it is beginning to impact whether they go to places or not.
Yeah, and that's good. I mean, people, you hope that countries are going to be more accepting. Some surprising countries are getting more accepting, but there are still a few out there where it's more challenging for LGBTQ travelers to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, let's look at everyone wants this business if they're smart. And they, as you said, the size of the market is incredible. But how can travel companies really capture the attention of youth and student travelers today? What are the best media to use? I mean, obviously we talk about social media, but social media is a pretty broad, broad scale. I mean, where do you go to promote your products and make sure the student travelers know what you have?
Yeah, well, I would say TikTok now is all the rage. Everyone, all the young people are on TikTok, and Instagram too is still very, very big.
Right.
They're the top two social media sites these days that this generation are on, using to find inspiration and advice. A recent piece of research actually ours found out that around 50% now of Gen Z are using TikTok before Google to search for travel advice and inspiration. So TikTok is becoming a search engine, which is a really interesting transformation. Really, just if we could, on a kind of thematic level, you could call it vertical video. And so Instagram Reels, TikTok videos, YouTube Shorts, basically video you look at on your phone. That seems to be the format now, but is having the most effect in terms of grabbing their attention. I would say that for the last few years, influencer marketing has been quite big, but we're seeing a kind of maturing of that now, and it's turning into more kind of content creation, I guess. So companies using their actual customers to help market for them, to talk to their peers in their own voice, kind of delivering messages and whatnot, but in a way they think will resonate with their own age group. And I think this is a good way to go. Above all, authenticity seems to be the key thing now. Just be transparent, truthful, and authentic, and that's obviously a good thing to be. So I think if you're ticking those boxes, you're going to get their attention.
Yeah, it's true. I am on TikTok, but barely. I'm still the Facebook generation, and I barely got in that. So, but interesting to see how you can market that way. Now, you do come up at the end of your report with sort of 7 predictions for student travel. Can you go over quickly those 7 predictions about what we're going to see in the future or near future?
Yeah, sure. So one of them was that we think we're going to see huge leaps in the personalization of things like trip planning, and we think that will be revolutionized by AI. So we think that it won't be long. I think it's already happening in some quarters, but there'll be software that can understand you as a person on a much deeper level than a more traditional travel agent might be able to do, and to suggest extremely personalized itineraries for you and suggestions of what to do and why, and maybe even how to frame those travels in the way I was talking about to potential employees once you're back. Okay. So I think that's
personalization is one, and actually that echoes a lot of the other markets that I see, where the trips are becoming much more personalized. You can't just give one trip does not fit all, so you have to make sure that you personalize it. Now, so that's one. So what's number 2?
Number 2 would be that Africa is going to, we think, emerge as a major outbound international student destination. So currently the big players in this market are China and India, and we think Africa's going to be quick to follow. So in Africa, 60% of their population is under 25. They've got the world's fastest growing middle class, but not necessarily the higher educational infrastructure to cater to everyone who's going to need it. So we think that a lot of young people in Africa will start looking overseas, particularly to the US, which is very, very highly regarded among this population, particularly sub-Saharan Africa. So that would be number 2.
And then 3?
Number 3, so we think that governments are going to just increasingly see the value in developing worldly minded citizens. So as we were talking about, you tend to return from these overseas experiences much more mindful of other cultures, much kind of easier to just be around, and much more tolerant, and just a better person all around. And I think that's, on the whole, a great thing for countries to have globally minded citizens. So governments will start seeing the value in doing that and helping to facilitate programs to make it happen. We think for number 4, the airlines and tourism boards are going to start investing a lot more in students and youth as they begin to understand the real value of this market. As I was talking about earlier, they can be seen as not valuable because they're budget conscious and whatnot, but actually they spend a lot more time in destination. They spend a lot more overall than average tourists. So we think we'll see a big pick up there.
Okay.
We think number 5, so youth leisure travel, as we've discussed, will become a lot more purpose-driven, a lot more purposeful. So not just going away just to go kind of wild and pursue that hedonistic side of things, but to really get under the skin of a place and understand it better. We think for number 6 of the 7 that student brands and just really any travel brands are going to start accelerating growth a lot more through strategic partnerships. So just basically joining forces with relevant brands to kind of leverage one another's audiences and grow quicker.
Right.
And we think lastly that travel experiences are going to become kind of rocket fuel really for career progression. We think that as younger people learn more and more how to talk about these experiences on their CVs and on their resumes and in job interviews and things like that, it will become almost a cultural norm, if you like, and an expectation that they've got at least some travel experience, so to help with careers too.
No, absolutely. I think I've interviewed people like that, and the more well-traveled they are, obviously we're in the business. So, we'd like to see someone who actually has been around, but a well-traveled and educated and someone who's exposed to all these things is a lot more attractive as a job candidate than someone not. Now, Will, I want to thank you for spending some time with us today to talk about this survey. And for our viewers out there, where can they first go learn more about Student Universe? And second of all, where can they find more about this study, this survey?
Sure. So the student, and it's my pleasure, by the way, thank you for having me on. People who want to learn more about Student Universe, visit our website, studentuniverse.com, or you can find us on the app stores as well. And in terms of the report, there's a link on our homepage, which should be fairly prominent, so you can just go through and view the report online, and you can read it there for free.
Fantastic. Well, Will, again, thank you for going through this very good report. I mean, I hadn't seen anything like it. Certainly not recently. And of course, you guys are some of the experts in student travel. So, and it sounded like you have a pretty good core survey group that to go through this survey. So this is really something that I think everybody should take a look at if you want to really truly understand the student and youth travel market today. Again, Will, thank you so much and hope to catch up with you soon.
Thanks, James. Great to talk.
I'm James Shillinglaw, and this is Insider Travel Report.